Welcome everyone. In this tutorial we're going to have a look at drawing faces and characters specifically for storyboarding, and while I can usually divulge really deeply into drawing anatomy and proportions and stuff correctly, that's kind of not what this is about. This is early level storyboarding. This is doing thumbnail sketches and scamps and stuff like that, and specifically what we're going to start looking at is using specific types of tools. So in this instance, we are going to have a look at some really basic tools like pencils, and they are a fantastic way to start off your concepting and your storyboards. Later on, if you want to go into other physical tools, we've got things like inks and Copic markers and basically anything that's going to get your message across. Of course, we can also go digital. We might have a look at that, at least in some sense, of some of the inspirational programs out there to help us and guide us into getting good drawing. We're going to have a quick look at past influences and sort of what drives how we can draw characters. We're going to look at some references that we can use to help us in our drawing and our techniques, and then we're going to jump into drawing basic faces and basic character drawing just to get the information across that we want for our audience. So let's first have a look at the tools here. So what I've got here is some samples of what you can do with a graphite pencil. And graphite pencils are great, they're very easy to get hold of, but you might want to have a quick look at what some of these can do. So our stock standard, what we want to call stock standard office pencil, is typically an HB pencil, and that's short for hard black, and it's good medium run around pencil. It's pretty solid. It's not too hard, so it's not going to be dark. It's not too soft, so it's not going to be too light. As you start going in the lighter direction, in the H direction, the graphite starts getting harder, and you start getting lighter and lighter pencils. And this image here is stopping at 2H, but I think we can go all the way down to 12H, which, you know, if you're trying to draw with that, you're going to get a super ridiculously fine line. You're barely going to be able to see it, and it's hard to get any darker than that. For my money, I do occasionally work with an H pencil to get really light line work out, but realistically the HB is my go-to for most things. I find it light enough if you don't push too much pressure on it, but it also allows you to get a little bit of detail and darkness without going out of control. As we start delving into the darker stuff, and we can go up to 12B if we wanted to, the graphite, the lead concentration on that, it becomes softer, and in doing so it also becomes darker as well. So you can get really dark lines for that. I typically won't go much past a 2B if I have to. I will occasionally use a 4B if I need to get a few areas really dark, but typically for graphic based stuff and, you know, trying to draw neat storyboards, I'd stick around an HB to a 2B just to get some darker lines in. Anything above that is just going to start smudging and get really scruffy. So, you know, keep that in mind, and, you know, you'll be safe with just a stock standard office HB in most cases. But play around, different pencils of different qualities. Alright, so the other thing I want to mention is this one here. This is a non-photo blue pencil, and you can pick these up at a lot of stationery stores. They're not used as much as they used to, and if we have a look at this image here, you can actually see some of the blue lines coming through that the artist has drawn in first as a guide, and then gone over with graphite pencil, or potentially gone over with ink or whatever you need to. Now the beauty of these is, as the name describes, if non-photo, if you do scan these or photocopy these, it will remove the blue from it, so you actually end up with just the grey or the black areas of your ink or pencil, which is awesome. So it allows a little bit more freedom, but in essence you can use just a standard colored pencil. So this technique was used by Walt Disney, for example, and it's kind of carried on. You could use a standard blue pencil or a standard red pencil or anything else like that, as long as if it's got a different color, and it's gonna just make your work a little bit easier and define what it is before you commit to a pencil. And then you've got to, you know, if you need to make a mistake, you can erase and all the rest of it. But even in Photoshop, you can simply or any other photo editing software, you can simply scan your image in, and then you can go to something which is going to convert your colors to black and white, and you can basically pick out the blue or the red and adjust it so it equals white, and in that sense it will make that blue line disappear, which is really, really useful. So Google it. There's quite a few tutorials, or look it up. There's some great ways of doing that. So either way, it's a good technique for not committing to gray lines before you need to, and if you can get hold of just a blue pencil or red pencil, I think you might find it's really going to free up your drawing. All right, let's have a look at the next thing. So next thing I want to mention is this guy, William Andrew Loomis. He was mostly known as Andrew Loomis, and I'm going a little old school with this, but he passed away in 1959, but his books on anatomy are still some of the go-tos for getting anatomy drawn correctly. And I just want to do a throw out to that, because while his techniques are really, really solid and his books are extremely thorough, they are very heavy. And if you really want to get into anatomy drawing, this is a good start, but realistically we're not going to use his technique. Even though I do really appreciate the technique, it does take a long time to get used to. So be aware of it, and I will sort of mention as I'm showing you the following drawing techniques, we're not following his technique. It is not going to be perfect. It's about getting the message across of what you want your character to be saying. Next thing, drawing figures. How can applications and other techniques help us? So what I typically find is a lot of students will really just chuck away and just try their hardest to draw perfectly, and they'll draw and redraw and redraw and redraw, and then get frustrated. Use references. References are absolutely essential. I still use references to this day, and here's a couple of really, really good ones. If you have access to a computer or a tablet or a smartphone, you can actually get some really good applications for this. So I'm going to mention a few, but there's plenty out there. The first one I'm going to mention is one called Magic Poser. Now, Magic Poser actually has a web version of its application. So if you just type in Magic Poser web, it'll lead you to that, and it's got a very simple interface where you can pose a character and you can take a photo of that, and that might help you actually with your drawing of your figures, because it allows you to choose different angles and develop the poses. It can be time consuming adjusting the pose to exactly how you want. So for myself, unless I'm doing a really detailed drawing, I usually won't use this. I'll rely on my own intuition, particularly early stages with drawing stick figures or rough storyboards or scamps. So, but pretty good and free for the most part. You can get an updated version with cost money. The next two, if you are going to get a little bit more serious, these are two that I'd probably recommend. One is called Skelly, and it is by a YouTube artist who's got some fantastic drawing and anatomy and all sorts of drawing stuff. If you have a look up Proco online, you'll be able to find some of his videos, but he's got a really neat app called Skelly App 2.0. At this point it's 2.0, and it's got a little skeleton, and it's got some other posing things that will help your drawing skills for drawing anatomy. So really, really like that one. I do want to give a big shout out to an app called Pose It. It's not actually 1.33 at the moment, it's 2 point something. It is an independent developer, and I really do love this app. It is super intuitive. You can choose between skeletons and mannequins, and you've even got werewolves in there and a few other weird things like that, and you can change the lighting in the poses, and it's extremely powerful. These last two are paid apps, but if you are going to get serious for a relatively small amount of money, you can get some really good product, and you can set up your poses and help it to with your drawing for your characters, for your scene or your concepts or whatever. It's really good stuff. The other thing I can recommend is more physical stuff. So life drawing classes. If you can attend a couple of life drawing classes, it will really boost your ability to draw characters, because rather than just drawing from photos, which is also not bad, but drawing a live character with speed pose rounds will really boost your drawing skills really, really quickly. And they're kind of fun too. Other than that, photograph yourself or a friend. So you can find images online, but you can also make the poses yourself. You can stand in front of a mirror, you can set up a camera and get the pose you want for the shot, get the angle and all that kind of stuff. And you know, don't feel weird about it. Usually when I'm drawing, I will, you know, check myself literally to figure out what sort of pose I would do as a human. So you've got this mobile reference station going with you. So if I need to pick up a heavy object, I will bend down and pretend to pick up a heavy object, and I'll observe what my body's doing to help with the posing. So really good. Get a mannequin. So over here is the classic wooden mannequin. I've got a couple of floating around my studio. I don't use them a hell of a lot anymore. I tend to actually go digital or photo or use myself, or I just trust myself, but they are really good. And you can also get more modern ones which have some really cool details and that kind of stuff. So if that helps you out, great. But you know, check out some of the free options as well, like, you know, try pose it, try take some photos of yourself, that kind of stuff. So really, really cool. But you know, see what works for you. I think, you know, the more you try things, the more you find it's going to work for you, and the better it is. All right, let's jump in. We're going to start with drawing the head and the face. And while I do highly recommend using references for this, when we're drawing thumbnail storyboards, we usually have to go quite quickly. So it's good to try and understand this. So usually what I'm going to recommend when we're drawing face is start off with just a circle for this. So practice your circle drawing. I'm a bit rusty, but if you keep going really, really lightly, you should eventually get a nice circle shape for your head. The more you practice, the better it is. So I'm going to be drawing a front face to start with. And this is like the super simplified version. I mentioned Loomis before. He's got a very complicated one, but this is the simplified version. So here's our front face, and essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to get roughly about a half of that and add it to the bottom. So half the distance of that, and I'm just going to bring down the jaw. And basically it curves down from the head and then tapers out a bit, and then we hit the chin. Now if you don't get it straight away, you know, you could just eyeball it and just throw in a jaw in there anyway. Alright, next one. Now if we actually measure that from top to bottom, as I said, I always get a bit irky when I do this, because this goes actually against law. If you go about the halfway distance from the top to the bottom, you could roughly call that where the eyes are going to go. So, you know, that's a good start. And if you go halfway again from the middle of that to the middle of that, you can roughly guess where your eyes are going to be. And I'm just going to put some little crosses there now. The halfway point from the eyes to the chin, look, let's call it, we're just going to put the nose there. Now I don't usually recommend getting super detailed on the nose. Usually just like a little seagull or a little triangle like that, just to indicate the nose for a thumbnail storyboard, is just fine from a front. And then again, if we go another half again, we can probably draw in a little bit of a mouth. Now the ears, we can go from the eyes to the nose. That's going to be relatively close for that. And I also recommend trimming off some of the head so it doesn't look like too much of an egghead like that. Alright, not great, but that's kind of the point, is it's quick. So once you get the hang of this, you could literally draw a circle, pop it down a little bit, and do this. This is the hot cross bun technique, as I like to call it. This is going to tell us which direction the face is looking. We can throw some eyes in, we can drop a nose in, and we can drop a mouth in relatively quickly, throw in some ears, and we've got a, you know, a fairly decent face. It's pretty expressionless, but it's okay. At this point, I want to put out the idea of the importance of accessorizing your face. So I'm just going to turn these guys off again. I'm just going to create a new one. Once again, circle, really bad circle there, sorry everyone. Circle, and bring that in. There's a chin and a jaw, halfway point, Here's roughly where my eyes are going to be, and then halfway is roughly where my nose is going to be, and halfway again is roughly where my mouth is going to be. Nothing too flash, and I'm going to put some ears on. I'm just going to cut those bits off the head. Again, keep your pencil strokes light. You can always add details later. At this point I should probably be using blue as well. Alright. So there's my little face. Cool. Alright. Now, I'm working digitally, so I can do this, but I'm just going to move this across a little bit. So we've got two identical faces. Now, this is the important part, is that I can actually change these faces dramatically with a couple of really quick touches, and those little touches are actually eyebrows. So when we're defining a character, a couple of things we can do to really get that character's expression done really quickly is with eyebrows. So for example, if I suddenly put in some really sort of furrowed brow, you can sort of see he looks kind of angry. And this guy here, if I kind of put like one eyebrow up and one eyebrow down a little bit, he's going to look a little bit kind of like confused or what's going on sort of things. I've done nothing else to the drawings beside that, and don't be afraid to use little expressive icons if that helps out your image. When you're drawing storyboards, it's about getting the message across. Of course, from there you can also change the mouth expression if you need to, but do remember that when someone does open their mouth, their jaw will get wider. So if that is the case, you may need to sort of adjust the face altogether. But I do want to really sort of reiterate that it is a lot to do with drawing quickly and just getting the information across as to what needs to be done. Alright, I'm going to clear these guys out. I think we kind of get the message of that. Circle, halfway point is the eyes, then halfway point again is the nose, halfway point is the mouth. Again, don't quote me on that. This is for storyboard stuff. Alright, but what about drawing some side profiles? So side profile is kind of the same. We start again with a circle, and we want to find the halfway point, but this instance I'm going to have this character looking over here to the left. And what we want to do is we want to add, once again, if we take the middle part of that and add it to the bottom, we want to add a jaw. So what I can actually do is just kind of follow that line around. There's my additional half heading down this way, and I can have that tapering in a little bit and then coming up, and that's going to be the jaw. So if you actually look at a skeleton, you will kind of notice that it will be kind of this big sphere where the human head is. This is where the brain is, and then from there we'll get the eye sockets. Excuse me while I do this fairly quickly, and then we'll get the nose coming out a little bit, and then we'll get the lower jaw kind of popping in. And get the teeth happening here. I'm doing this like quick, but and then the lower jaw will be attached onto that with some hinges. So something like that. Mine's a little bit weird, but we're doing it rushed. So we want to kind of get that. It's going to come down a little bit, and we're going to reach this little point here, and then it's going to angle down a little bit. From there, we can throw in an ear. Again, that ear is going to be where the halfway point is going to be roughly where the eyes are. I'm going to put little triangles for that. Halfway point again is going to be where the nose is, and then halfway again is where the mouth is. And you can kind of see where that's going. Without getting too much detail, you can get a reasonable looking head in there from that. But keep it simple. I'm adding a little bit more detail. It's hard for me not to be honest with you, but you could literally just go, well, let's draw a side profile head. Circle, great. Drop it down a little bit. Triangle. Nose is a great tell for which direction. Throw in an ear, that's going to tell as well, and then you could just add a little smile for that and some eyebrows, and that's a reasonable head, and with very little work it's telling the story of which direction the face is turning, and we should be good. Alright, next one. 3/4. So this one's a little bit trickier, but it still works on the same principle. we start with our cranium, and then we try and figure out which direction the head's looking. So front facing, we basically said, all right, well, this is our hemisphere, and from that we're going to have the left and the right of the face, and then the nose, and then the mouth. Well, the same thing applies, except what we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out what that hemisphere is going to be looking at. So I'm going to have this guy sort of looking up and to the left, so I'm going to pretend that this line here is following all the way down, and it's going to go straight and off as we head down, and from there I can figure out where the chin is. So this one does take a little bit more, imagination to get right. From there I can try and find the halfway point of that, and perspective is going to be a bit of an issue. The halfway point again is where the nose is going to be, and the halfway point again is going to be where the mouth is, and I'm probably going to have some ears. I'm not going to see them on the other side, so I won't draw them. And then from there you can draw your little crosses for eyes, and you could probably draw a little bit more detail in for the mouth and all the rest of it. And because he's looking up, we're going to probably see that neck coming around a little bit more, and we can kind of see where that's going. So super quick, but if you really want to get a really quick way of doing this, even if it's just a circle, get that hot cross bun happening. That's going to tell you where the eyes are, another one for the nose, another one for the mouth, and then just add your details after the fact, and you're going to be pretty good. Here's another thing I've actually forgotten to mention, and that is, let's bring these guys back, is using using little bits of information to define your characters. So if you're going to be doing a lot of these sort of really quick characters, try and find a way to define character A from character B, particularly if they look very, very similar. So remember, your audience doesn't necessarily know exactly what you've drawn. So if you're giving this to a director or something, they might look at it and they might see the same or similar drawings and they go, oh, that's both the same character. And if they're not, think of ways you can change it. And one way is to use a different color for each character. So one guy could be red, the other one could be blue, or you could put a marker on them. So this is character A, for example, and this is character B, so that could be a tell as well. The other way is add a feature that character has that the other one doesn't. This could be a hat, or it could be a bow tie, or it could be a particular haircut or something like that. It's just going to be a little tell so that your audience knows that is a different person when they're looking at it. And then continue that through all the drawings. It doesn't have to be detailed, particularly for your early sketches. So have a go at that. See if you could draw a bunch of faces, put some different expressions on them, and get used to drawing them from different angles. Those ears, eyes, and nose placement are going to be absolutely paramount. Later on, when you get more time, you could spend it putting in the details, and if you get even more time, do study stuff like the Loomis technique. Once you get the technique for drawing a face well, you kind of keep it forever. So it's well worth investigating.